Hi, how's it going, everyone? My name is Glenn Gare. I am founding director of evolutionary studies at the State University of New York at New Paltz. And I also am a founding member of the Northeastern Evolutionary Psychology Society, or NEEPS. And I'm currently a member of the executive board at NEEPS. And we recently agreed that we were going to make a podcast. We're calling it the NEEPS Cast. Really just to give people a sense of who we are, what our society is about, and just to sort of let the public know what's going on in the world of NEEPS. So this is the very first episode of the NEEPS Cast, and I am here in New York, and I am talking to my good friend Joel Wade, who is in Pennsylvania right now. Joel is the co-chair of psychology and presidential professor of psychology at Bucknell University. He is president of NEEPS, and he is just starting his second term as president of NEEPS. So welcome, Joel. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Very excited about having you on the show.
Oh, thank you.
In the acronym NEEPS, Northeastern Evolutionary Psychology Society, has evolutionary psychology sort of in the center of it. And it's a society dedicated to that particular approach to psychology. So maybe tell us a little bit regarding what is evolutionary psychology and why do you think it's important?
Okay. That's a really good question, a good place to start. For me, evolutionary psychology really represents the intersection between social behavior and biology, in the sense that it allows you to see the biological underpinnings of social behavior, the biological motivations for social behavior, these motivations that aren't, let's say, consciously known. They aren't part of our conscious awareness. So that's how I tend to think of evolutionary psychology: adaptations based on biology designed to have us successfully deal with environments, save ourselves, save other people, reproduce, things like that.
Excellent. So one of the concepts you put out there was the idea of adaptation, which I think is very central to the idea of evolutionary psychology.
Yes.
So what would be maybe an example of a psychological or a behavioral adaptation, so that would be a clear example maybe for people who are not familiar with the general idea to be able to access?
Well, for example, there are numerous adaptations that influence our mate selection. That is, both men and women tend to focus on certain characteristics in mates that would lead to longer, let's say, excuse me, I shouldn't say longer, but will lead to healthy lives, produce healthy offspring, will basically enhance their survival as well as the survival of the partners. And these aren't things that people would normally be aware of if you asked them. So
excellent. So I think adaptations related to the mating domain are very central in the field. And that leads well to my next question, because I'm interested in some of your particular research. And I know that you've done a lot of research on the topic of mating in your work. So maybe if you could speak to either an upcoming research project or a current research project, something that excites you and something that maybe you might present at NEEPS or have presented at NEEPS.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, a good deal of my research deals with mating, mate selection, mate attraction. So research that I find really interesting is the research I do on flirting. That is, if you're trying to attract a mate for the short term, or you're trying to attract a longer term mate, that is somebody that you would consider marrying, living with, et cetera, for a long period of time, how would you let that person know that you're interested in them? So, and some of the earlier research with students looked at nonverbal aspects of this, but the more recent stuff is focused on things that you would actually say and things that you would actually do. And we expected that there would be differences among men and women. And of course, we did find that there are differences among men and women. basically what we found was actions that men do that suggest that they are committed, willing to commit, are altruistic, are going to sacrifice to help the partner, things like that were perceived as far more effective than other types of actions. Mm. And for women, it was actions that suggest that there could be sexual access for the male, actions that also suggest that she cared and was interested in commitment also. So a bit of a sex difference there, but a sex difference that would be predicted by evolutionary psychology. Specifically, if we looked at parental investment, we looked at some other theories and aspects too. So that's been a lot of fun to do. I've done a few studies on that. What I'm currently doing is trying to do some cross-cultural work on that. That is, I have colleagues in Norway who are collecting data. We're using basically the same questionnaire. It's modeled after these earlier studies I mentioned, looking at things people would say and the actions that they would take. And what we intend to do is to do a comparison to see if Norwegians and Americans find the same things effective. Mm-hmm. Now, expecting that there will be a bit of a cultural difference because the Norwegian culture is a bit different than the U.S. culture. That is, the sex roles in the Norwegian culture are let's say, different from conventional sex roles in the U.S. That is, women behave in a sort of different fashion than women in the U.S. typically do. So we're just getting underway with that. We have the data for the Norwegian sample, and now we're starting to collect the data for the American sample. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, because anthropologists argue that flirting is universal. Mm-hmm. So this gives us an attempt to, or gives us a chance to see if indeed there is any use of universality here, just among these two cultures. Now, it would be nice to also, in the future, include some other cultures. So that's a very great with the flirting. And then I have some other stuff I'm going to be presenting in Paris with some colleagues in March, looking at competitive flirting. That is, if you're trying to, and this is specifically looking at women, we haven't looked at men, but if you are trying to get a guy to notice you, to interact with you, but there's also another woman that's trying to get this guy to interact with her, how do you go about competing? That is, what would you do to let this woman know that you have your eye on this guy and that she should step down? So that's some work that as I say, we're going to be presenting at in an international conference in Paris in March. So,
wow.
So it's been a lot of fun. The flirting stuff has been a lot of fun to do.
That's great. And I know you spoke with some of my students here at New Paltz about that research just last April as part of the NEEPS conference activities. Yes. My students were absolutely inspired and intrigued by everything that you were talking about. So that leads to my next question, which gets a little bit more at the NEEPS experience itself. So you've been a member of the NEEPS Society since the beginning in 2007. I believe you came to the very first conference.
Yeah, I remember. We were a small group, but there was great stuff.
Yeah, there was good energy and a lot of people interested in making it happen. So yeah, maybe if you could speak a little bit about your perspective on two things, on sort of the history of NEEPS and also how NEEPS is conceptualized in terms of connecting with students.
Yeah, well, NEEPS is this unique organization, and of course you were the founder and first president, and so we're ever so thankful for that and your vision on that. But NEEPS is this unique society. Of course, it's the first regional offshoot of the Human Behavior and Evolution Society, and it was really great that they were supportive and still are supportive of us. So, and it allows those of us with an evolutionary psych focus or evolutionary behavior focus in the Northeast to get together and talk about our research and present things yearly. And it's the group has grown so much over the years. Very, very interesting, talented people involved. The goal, I think, has always been to be supportive of one another's research, one another's efforts. It's a fairly diverse group. I mean, we've had international folks. We have members that aren't only in the Northeast. We have some international members. We have gender diversity. We starting to get some ethnic diversity, and that's of course going to continue. So it's this wonderful little group that I suppose one way to think of it is it's almost like a tribe, in the sense that everyone tends to be quite supportive and looking to be supportive and help people with their research. And with that in mind, there's a big emphasis on being student friendly. That is, students doing presentations, students doing posters, students taking on some roles in the conference with support and help from faculty mentors. The conference has been really great in helping people get their careers started, being supportive of people who are going up for promotion, people who are on the tenure track, things like that. It's a really affirming system, in the sense that it's one of those conferences where you always feel energized when you come out of it, because there's such great energy and there's such really interesting research there. I'm always floored when at the conferences, when some of the presentations that just are among the students are just really amazing, and also among our faculty colleagues. So we used to say we're the little society that can, so to speak, but now we used to think of ourselves as this little society, but now we're not so little anymore, and we get things done. Yeah. I mean, we've had some of the biggest names in evolutionary psychology give keynotes at our conference, and it wasn't like we had to do anything other than invite these people. So it's NEEPS is this really great gym that tends to work very well and tends to do some very, very good things.
Yeah, well, certainly I agree with you on all of that. And I guess my next question, maybe the final bit, kind of connects our student emphasis and the excitement regarding the conference. So the upcoming conference will be held in Boston, June 2nd to the 4th. And the hosts for this conference actually are, in this particular case, 2 graduate students. Yes. Stacy McAnova, who is a doctoral student in psychology at Florida State, and Jimmy Moran, who is at Tulane University in a doctoral psychology program. So I think that you know them pretty well, if I understand, and maybe you could speak a little bit about Jimmy in particular, who had studied in your lab, and what we're thinking for this upcoming conference and why people should be excited about it.
Yeah, Jimmy and Stacy are two just examples of 2 of the types of students that tend to be involved with NEEPS. I mean, Jimmy and Stacy have always been very active in NEEPS in terms of presenting and both posters and talks, and they're both members of the student members. Well, Stacy's the secretary of the executive board. Jimmy is the student representative, and they stepped up to take a major role in organizing the upcoming conference. So, and Jimmy was did his master's thesis with me. He was one of the most productive master students I ever had. I mean, he's just a wonder in terms of ideas and theorizing, and I just, it was really great to have him in the lab, because every day we were having discussions about research and topics, and going out and collecting data, and so much so that Jimmy's in the PhD program now down at Tulane. He's doing really good, but we're still analyzing and working on things that he did when he was here. So he's been a real Jim in that sense, and I'm sure once he is done with his PhD, he will do well in the field and will probably go far.
Absolutely.
I mean, Stacy's just been really. I'm always floored with the research that Stacy presents at NEEPS. So
absolutely. Now, Stacy, who by the way has published in Psychological Science, which is one of the most respected journals worldwide in the field. She started as maybe a 21-year-old kid who showed up from somewhere, I believe, in Georgia or somewhere in the South, came to our conference all by herself in 2011 at Binghamton, didn't know a soul. She just liked the idea of evolutionary psychology. She had done some research as an undergrad, and she showed up with a smile and a poster, and we were just amazed and impressed with her from day one. So to see where she is now, I think is just it's a great NEEPS story.
It really is.
So the conference will be in Boston. We have intentionally placed it adjacent time-wise to the meeting of the Human Behavior Evolution Society.
Yes.
Our keynote speakers are top speakers and researchers in the field. Maybe we could end a little bit with you speaking about the keynotes and some other highlights about the upcoming conference.
Yeah. We have two really great keynotes. One is our own Dr. Becky Birch, who I always look forward to hearing Becky's presentations anyway, but hearing her give a keynote will be especially appealing. So, because Becky is a gifted and talented researcher who did a lot of her early work with Gordon Gallup, and she's continued to do some really interesting stuff and is this really dynamic speaker. So great to see her give this keynote. And then we have Bobby Lowe, who is coming to us from University in Michigan, and also is quite well known, has done a number of books on various aspects of evolutionary psychology. So we have two more really great keynotes. You know, we've always had this history of having really strong and impressive keynotes at NEEPS. So, and that tradition is continuing with the two keynotes we have this year. We've also, for the conference this year, and Jimmy and Stacy, of course, played a big role in this, we are incorporating some new things. Like we have a data blitz this time, which is a new aspect of NEEPS, but the idea here is to give people a chance to talk about some of their early research interests, just sort of give a snapshot of what they're doing, where they're going, maybe even get some feedback that could be helpful, things like that. So that should be really interesting. That's a new aspect of NEEPS. We also have some mentoring sessions planned where we have some invited speakers from, or we have some invited EvPsych folks from, and I should say evolutionary behavior folks also from the Human Behavior and Evolution Society conference who are going to be meeting with our graduate students and talking with them. So that's another example of sort of our student-centered, student outreach aspect. So it should be a really interesting conference, and the fact that we are happening right after the Human Behavior and Evolution Society should be very nice too. So, because I mean, Boston has always been a good site for us. I think our largest conference ever was in Boston, and I would not be surprised if we don't this time around outdo what we did last time. So I'm really looking forward to the conference this year.
Well, that sounds great. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to it as well. And Dr. Joel Wade, everyone, if I don't see you before then, Joel, I will see you in Boston.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Yep, you got it. This has been the NEEPS Cast, and thank you so much. Take care.